And I put it live. We
Sweet.
should be streaming.
Cool.
Good. Nice.
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 Hey, we're actually on time, so let's kick.
Yeah, we're at like literally minutes. It's. Oh, it's true. I gotta change my.
Are you on finish time?
No, what? No, I had my speakers on. Had to switch to headphones.
Nice.
Right. Yeah, I guess we're starting. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the pre show. I'm your host, Zansu. And yeah, this is Skim.
That sounded super creepy, by the way.
Yes.
Super creepy. I'll just go with it.
Yeah.
Hello.
Skim, introduce yourself.
Yeah, hey guys, my name's Skim, and I'm just a lurker in the Dota 2 scene. Nice to meet you all.
And Noxville, introduce yourself.
Hello, I'm Noxville. I do stats. I'm also a lurker in the Dota 2 scene. What's up?
Right.
That was probably the worst introduction.
Yes. I'm too lazy to actually tweet it out properly, so I just retweeted whatever Skim just tweeted. So yeah, hopefully people find this. Hopefully people.
It's okay.
Like whatever. Yeah. Okay. I guess I'm taking over hosting duties because Skim.
I mean, I technically could also host, but
yeah, screw you, man.
Go for it.
I did all this work. I put together my beautiful overlay.
Yeah,
it has a shitty wizard on it.
Yeah, this production value is pretty massive. Okay, let's kick it off. What are we going to talk about?
Yeah, so start off with yesterday's games. The groups, of course, here, but the first game we had was EG Rave.
Yeah.
And, well, game one, not much to say. They kind of just destroyed them. I don't know if there was even much about the draft. It's just it felt like EG had a very good idea of what they wanted to do, and they just kind of outplayed them.
I think what you can see though from EG in that draft is that they are more like in comparison to their match against C9 before. I think you could tell that they're more adapted to the new patch or just the way the new patch is played, because this sort of aggressive tri lane with, sure, it was with a Void, but just the idea of running an aggressive tri lane and having two very aggressive supports that roam around the map, and then a solo safe laner, a really strong solo safe laner with the Clinks. I think this is actually something that we're going to see a lot of this patch, because I think Clinks is really strong right now. And I think EG, just the way they played it was, or just the way they laned it and the way they dropped it, I thought it was much better than what they had against C9.
It follows that classic sort of methodology that Black had for how do you run Clink successfully. You essentially give him a solo lane, 1v1 matchup, and then he has access to that jungle. The Dire jungle is actually better for Clinks than the Radiant jungle, but it works nicely from where they did it as well. So yeah, that was a pretty straight up decimation.
So one thing I wanted to say about that is that we saw, just to like make a note now, because we'll come back to it later, is that it was the Clinks safe lane.
Yeah.
That's all you have to, that's just part one of analysis that we're going to get to.
And
so what? Yeah, game number two, we saw a different player, but the same combination. Tiny Wisp, Jardel or Chrissy played the Wisp both times, but it was Jo in game number two and in game number one, and it was Ninja Boogie in game number two who played it. And Ninja Boogie, in terms of the stats, did much better. Got a lot more kills, a lot more assists, but
yeah.
Do you think that was more the draft and the ability to perform against the heroes that they had, or do you think did you prefer the actual play of Ninja Boogie compared to Jo? Jo played at mid, Ninja Boogie safe.
I think Rave generally played that game a lot better. Like they were a lot more active, a lot more Like they had more of an idea of what EG wanted to do, and they worked pretty well in the early game. They
In
worked
game number
around
one,
what they wanted to do
in
themselves.
game number one, EG had like four like reliable mid game stunts. They had the Lina, well, the line to set up. They had the Magnus as a setup, and then they had the Lina to follow up, and they had a Void. Like they had a lot of lockdown.
I mean, they have a lot of lockdown in the second game as well. It's just that, well, Windrunner isn't that reliable.
Yeah.
Leshrac isn't that reliable.
Yeah, but with Venge to set it up and Beastmaster, like it makes it very reliable.
Yeah.
Like the way in which Dota's balanced is that things that are harder to do have a higher reward when you pull them off right. Like getting a Windrunner shackle between two players, like we saw Sumail do so many times. Like it really, really has a big impact in team fights.
Yeah. I was actually really surprised that, this lineup just to me looks like it should be really powerful early on. And the fact that they actually lost the early game and then came back later. I mean, it has sort of this aura stacking feel of, you get Venge and you get the aura from Universe, and that helps out Sumail in terms of being really powerful, especially when he gets Aghanims. He just becomes really nasty. Desolator Aghanims and the crit on top. Yeah, that's really nasty.
I didn't really like Sumail's performance that much in the offlane.
No.
First game that he's ever played in offlane, he almost always is mid, like 83.3% of the time. And his second is safe lane, tri lane. And he even dual lanes mid. But this is the first time we've seen him offlane. I think it was like an interesting idea. I think it was worth experimenting. And Rave is the best team to experiment of the teams at the summit. But ideally, this is something that should have happened in an online game against some tier 2 North American team.
I mean, I think the lane setup in itself, like if we disregard which player was comfortable where, I think the way they set it up was actually pretty good. I think a Beastmaster does actually fairly well against Tiny Wisp. Although I think you could see that, I don't know, it didn't really feel like Universe was really comfortable in the mid lane, and then Sumail wasn't also really comfortable in the off lane. But I think just the general how they laned it, in theory, was actually pretty good in my opinion, because if they had played it better, they would have even managed to shut down Jo, which they did an okay job, but Jo quickly just caught up because it's Razor. And Universe just that bottle or that Kuria grab from Chrissy for the second time. It was just, I don't know. It just made it almost impossible for Universe to get anything out of the lane without dying.
Yeah, like end of the day, it was still Rave had the game in the bag, and then they didn't pick their opportunities correctly. You have to know when to force it and when not, and they just didn't. So
it was pretty close in the second game.
Yeah,
I think that if EG didn't have the glyph, they would have lost the game. Like that's how close it was.
But what I do have to mention though, while we're all talking about this, and yeah, this was maybe one of the closest game we've seen in this tournament yet. But at the same time, it's just because both teams played actually incredibly bad.
Yeah,
I mean, there was a lot of. There were good plays, but there were also just as many really bad plays.
Yes,
so
exactly.
It sort of balanced itself out. Like, if either team had reduced their amount of bad plays, it would have been a very much more one-sided game.
Probably, yeah.
So, yeah. Next matchup, IG versus NotToday. There wasn't much to speak of here. Not today. Yeah.
Not today.
Not today. First game, just no.
Yeah, first game was a huge no, but I really liked the second game. I liked Smash's play was very, very impressive. On that Queen's Pain. It is a hero that's a very Smash-like hero, can do lots of things by himself, make pick-offs, make kills here, there, everywhere. But yeah, I don't know if it's like a situation of Smash being such a good player in a bad region, or because of how Smash plays, it limits the ability of his team to play. I don't know what the situation is, but he's a really good player. Like that's what we. Maybe it would be interesting to see him in an all-star match or as a sub for top tier team to see how he performs.
if he spoke proper English and just left that scene, he'd have a pretty good future. But as it stands, his teammates are really letting him down. Like, he has a 9-2-3 performance on that Queen of Pain, and the rest of his teammates are literally just feeding. So yeah, that it wasn't nice. But then we get to the real matchups of the day, and I'm going to ask Skim, as a C9 fanboy, how did it feel? How they
Wait. We're not politically correct here. Are we supposed to say another term for that? I'm just joking. That's not acceptable anyway.
I gotta say, honestly, it felt like a deja vu. It definitely felt like a deja vu because game one was. I honestly thought the draft that the Cloud9 had in game one was actually better than EG's, in my opinion. I thought they would at least win the jungle war and then also possibly at least not lose the mid lane, and the safe lane should be pretty good as well. The offlane was garbage, yeah, sure, but I don't know, they just played it really bad. Obviously, they also got really unlucky with N0tail not even spawning a Wildkin and stuff like that. But after that, it was just like pretty much typical C9 in an elimination match. Like, they got outplayed in game one, then they sort of came back in game two, but not necessarily because they were so good, but more so because their opponent did a few mistakes. And then game three, they just outdrafted themselves. So it's just, if there's any C9 fan out there listening to me right now, it's just, everybody will know that this is pretty much typical C9.
Classic Jackie Lamar.
Yeah. It's unbelievable.
So the thing is about game number one is I agree with you. I think that the draft wasn't bad from C9. Like, people on Reddit were saying it's the worst draft they've ever seen. That's like definitely a lie. I think the problem is that, and I was discussing this earlier because I had no power here, so I went over to Scans, who has no power, and we went over and we got some lunch together and we spoke about it. The power of picking the Clinks in your safe lane is very comparable to picking like a safe lane Quap or something like that, like Secret do. It means that you can leave that solo. You can let your supports roam around. They can do whatever they want. And it means that there's very low risk of your safe lane dying. And for it to die requires a lot of work from the enemy team. And in that game, we saw offlane Universe on his clockwork, as expected. And we saw safe lane Jackie Lamar on his gyrocopter. And one of the supports, which was Misery, had to spend a lot of time moving between mid and safe lane, protecting Eternal Envy. And there was no way in which they could go pressure Awi 2000, who was playing a PvE game, farming up the third fastest Aghanim Scepter that we've ever seen, and just being a nuisance. Like, it was the perfect game for Awi 2000. And that said, Fear on the Clinks, he could do whatever he wanted. There was no risk of him dying when his supports were running around at all. He was literally unkillable for a large stage of that game. And he went for a Helm of the Dominator, so he always had a creep nearby that he could death pact. Like, it's a very, very strong way of playing Clinks. But yeah, extra 500 HP from the Helm of the Dominator, pretty strong.
Yeah. The first game, it really wasn't even close. And yeah, absolutely, the Coddle pick defined that game.
I wouldn't say the pick, but just the way they played it.
Yeah, the way they played it, and just...
If you didn't have Eternal Envy and N0tail in that game, the score would have been, like, if you could just remove players from the game, the score would have been 12-12. Like, Eternal Envy and N0tail went 0-6. N0tail is a little bit more understandable, given that Clinks just got levels, got items, and hunted him. And he had such a bad early game through the not getting the tornado.
Yeah.
But, yeah, that was Eternal Envy there, like, just got shut. Like, the strategy worked for EG, I think, is really more than the strategy didn't work for C9.
Yeah, and, like, it was also really clear that EG wanted Cloud9 to keep on picking that gyrocopter. and
Yeah.
they wanted to play against it. So they really knew how to shut it down as well. Now, going into
Yeah.
the second game, that was
Wait, sorry. Just one thing on the first game. EG picked Dire. They had priority in that game. They picked Dire, so that was like 100% a strat. They actually picked. They're the only team to have not prioritized first pick or Radiance. Most of the teams have picked first pick, but a few have picked Radiant here or there. EG has picked Dire in their second game against C9 on day 1, and first game against them on day 3, and they picked second pick in the first game on day 1.
I think PPD might have a bit hinted at that, at what the reasoning behind that was, in terms of just of the offlane on Dire being more forgiving currently.
Yeah.
He talked a bit about that when he later came on to cast.
Yeah. And game number 2, like you say, I think that was a pretty even draft and pretty even play and a pretty even game. Like, that's the kind of game I think every C9 and EG fan wanted to see 3 of.
Yeah.
Although, obviously, EG fans would have preferred to see EG win at least 2 of those type of games. But
yeah,
I think that was a good game.
I think EG could have easily taken that game, but they weren't exactly coordinated. They spent that mid-game playing solo effectively. It was a bit of a blunder from them. They had control of the game, and then they went off and did whatever, and they let C9 back into the game. And then later on they had some problems in terms of how they utilized their AoE and such. So it felt like they weren't quite all on the same page the whole game. So
although Fear had a reasonable stats of 8 kills, 5 deaths, 11 assists, I think that he was definitely one of the weaker players in that game. I think that he got given a lot of room to farm in the early stages, and it just didn't convert into the mid game and the late game. Sumail also 4 for 8,
11. That was not a.
Universe played really well. It's actually quite rare that you see Universe have a higher GPM than Fear or Sumail. Since DAC, he's actually one of the offlaners that's taken less than all the other offlaners do on average, which is rare. But I mean, I guess it's also, since DAC, they haven't been running a lot of offlane Void, as an example. This is quite a rare game, and you expect to see higher GPM when he does that.
But the second game also, you could see that Cloud9 was really about to pull off a typical Cloud9 because they had such a huge advantage at some point, and they still struggled to sort of close the game. I mean, it's understandable considering just the nature of EG's lineup makes it really difficult as well, obviously. But I felt that Cloud9 really struggled to find the proper timing. When do we go in? When do we retreat? When do we go for more? And when do we just know that, okay, guys, this is enough. Let's just go back. I don't know. I think this is a big weakness for Cloud9 that they've suffered from in the last patch, especially.
What was that bot push where they just literally went in a suicided, and it was like.
I mean, even Kuroki said it while he was casting, right? Or was it Zai? Somebody who said it. This is typical Cloud9.
Yeah, I think it was Kuro.
They cannot push when they have to push the bottom safe lane on the Radiant. They're physically not able to do that. They make the same
mistake every time.
Yeah, exactly. And you could just see it there. It was really annoying. But eventually, I mean, just Fada. Honestly, I think Fada just carried them throughout the game. Fada, No-Tail were doing so much work. I'm not to take anything away from the others, but I think
Fata is really quite consistently beyond the sellouts. JK lol. In terms of Vulcan, Fata is almost always the best value for money as a player. He gets so many kills, so many assists. He farms well. He always plays like a hero. Even on Zeus, he farms a huge amount on Zeus.
Yeah.
He's all around. He does good things, and
he's a really good player compared to where people generally think he is.
Yeah, that's true. One other thing I wanted to ask is, so you know the distance of the ramp on the Dire side is 850 units, and on Radiant it's 780. Do you think that like that is significant in defending high ground when it comes to like things like having heroes like Enigma that can throw out a Midnight Pulse, when it comes to having Shadow Fiend who just has to throw a few raises and can stay quite far near the edge? Do you think that the whatever 70 tiles is significant?
I mean,
It's like 10%.
I do
5%.
see.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just gonna go ahead. C9 not being able to push in, that was not because EG was playing so incredibly well. Like they just dove behind the tier 3 tower until they were at the tier 4s almost at the fountain. So this is not really necessarily just because the lineup from EG was so incredibly well that they couldn't possibly take high ground. It was just C9 just completely misjudged the situation. I mean, yeah, they had really good heroes to defend high ground with, and I'm not too sure actually if the distance or if the distance makes that huge of a difference, but it was just C9's inability to just close up the game, in my opinion, anyway.
There is maybe a tendency for teams who want a turtle to pick Radiant. If you think back to DAC, Big God, I think they played a lot of Radiant, and they were always picking turtle lineups.
Did they lose to Rave when they were playing Dire?
I don't actually
I mean,
that's like, I don't remember that either.
But I think that comes down to other strength of being Radiant when you want to hold high ground, because when you want to create vision, it's much easier on Radiant to have vision over the enemy. Whereas if you're on Dire side, having vision over the enemy is actually pretty. It's not as easy because the typical ward spots or good ward spots aren't that good to find. Yeah, now you have that really cool ward spot at the bottom lane, but for the mid lane, where do you ward? Where do you actually put up a good ward where you get vision over the enemy heroes that could potentially initiate in? It's much easier on the Radiant side because you have that typical spot at the large camp, and then you also have the cliff on the left side where you're going towards the secret shop. So I think it's just the way the lanes are built. That it's it's easier on Radiant, but I don't think that in this particular case with Cloud9 and EG that I don't think it mattered that much.
Yeah, that's where you get Night Stalker when you're on Dire.
Yeah.
And Zeus. Get that vision going. So game 3. Okay, this one, like,
can I guide us through the draft, because I have a shit ton of thoughts about this.
Yeah.
So the bans they're pretty straightforward. I mean, taking out Visage and Shadow Fiend as Cloud9 is just standard. You don't really want to give Visage to AOI because he's the best Visage player in the world. Shadow Fiend is just an annoying hero from. It's also Sumail hero, so you don't really want to give it to them. Bans Broodmother and Wisp. I'm not too sure why they needed to ban the Broodmother. I don't think it was necessarily warranted, but at the same time, it could have been really annoying.
It's just
to play
an
against.
annoying hero.
Yeah, it's just an annoying
all
hero.
the reasoning.
So I believe it was EG with the first pick, right? They took Chen.
I think C9 thought they were baiting EG into a Chen pick.
Yeah,
and EG thought they were baiting C9 into a Bounty Hunter pick, and EG were correct.
You were correct, because they immediately answered with Bounty Hunter Gyrocopter. Now, I think one of the casters, I want to say it was Malini, that said maybe Cloud9 was influenced by the Vici.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. But I'm not too sold on that, because
it's a C9 strategy originally, but the VG uses against them, and they get into their head, oh, this is working again.
At the same time, the Bounty Hunter wasn't what won the game for Vici. Because if you look at the game, FY actually had a horrible game until he got like a few kills out of nowhere.
That's true.
And suddenly he burst in XP and farm, and then he was a nuisance, sure.
Yeah, but I mean, it's also just about like the Bounty Hunter is just there to dampen the Chen's early game. So yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, Gyrocopter pretty straightforward. Universe Clock also okay. Then they banned the Clinks, which is also okay. The bans are actually
they banned the Docs. Yeah?
No,
that's EG.
EG.
I meant C9. C9 bans Clinks and Anti-Mage, I think, pretty good heroes to ban out. And this is really smart from EG because they realize they don't actually care too much. Whatever thought
I don't actually agree with the Clinks ban. I mean, we'll see it again in the the later matchups. But why would you run Chen and Klinks on the same lineup? That's anti-synergy.
It's been done before, and
Yeah, yeah,
I
but
think it's good.
I don't think. I think you can. I just don't think it's. There's not a whole lot of.
But you've
benefit
always
to
got to
it.
like you get one of the reasons that you do the Helm of the Dominator thing is to make sure you always have a creep nearby and it's always got a lot of HP. Chain
Yeah.
like helps you do that.
you don't need the Helm of the Dominator anymore. Like
You
I
go
think-
straight DPS. Like you could even go medallion on. I'm not joking. You like I've seen this happen in pubs before.
Yeah, but
like,
you're still
incredible.
fighting for the same jungle unless you can actually control the opposing jungle. You're
no, that's the whole thing. Is Clink spends like 30% of his mid game in the enemy jungle hunting people. Like supports on the enemy team can't freely go into their jungle and just do owie like things. Like that doesn't happen. If
and
you have
Cloud9
Clinks.
has done it before with the Chen and the Klinks. Like they know that this can work for sure. Like it is actually. I honestly think it would have been good for EG if they had the Klinks, but I don't know. Like they banned it out anyway.
What do you think about the anti-mage ban?
I think
think-
anti-mage actually can work perfectly fine on this patch.
Yeah.
He's actually a pretty good laner. Like he can bully people on lane quite well. For example, Darkseer is becoming really, really popular, and if you think back to Darkseer anti-mage lane matchups when both were popular, like
Yeah, well, Darkseer was
Great
banned
TI
in this
3.
game.
yeah, no, but like in terms of like Darkseer is thought of as a really good laner, but you could actually even like back then you could win a 1v1 lane with anti-mage against Darkseer if you actually knew what you were doing. That's something that Black used to do. So I actually really like anti-mage, and I'm a bit surprised that he's not getting picked. I think he certainly can have a place in the game.
Alrighty then.
Anyway, I thought it was really smart from EG to ban on Bone 7's heroes because, in my opinion, if you wanna weaken C9, you want to make sure that Bone 7 does not have a good time, because
Well,
this is
that's what's
actually
the power of second pick. That's the power of second pick. They last banned Clockwork, picked Darkseer, and then in the second stage, they just banned out more.
No,
and
you
more and more.
mean last pick Clockwork band Darkseer?
Yeah. Pick Clockwork. Yeah. Sorry,
Yeah.
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 That
Yeah,
was-
it absolutely it forced C9. Like after watching those bans, I think C9 were like, okay, we gotta pick ourselves a offlaner fast before they come up with something silly and like.
And I think that when the Zeus got picked, EG knew straight away it was going to be a Bone 7 offlane Zeus.
I'm not too sure. I'm not too sure
Well-
they were, because they kept banning. For example, they also banned the Legion Commander.
Yeah.
It could have gone to Fada. At that
It could have
point.
gone to Fata, but they were like, okay, they've got a hero now. They need a hero for offlane. If we ban another offlane, the default is to give them this inferior hero and
Yeah.
pick another mid.
And this is, in my opinion, like this is the weakness of Cloud9, in my opinion. I don't know. It just felt like they weren't really flexible enough, because I think it was Zai or Kuroki. Somebody proposed it, like, why don't you just go aggressive with the Gyrocopter and the Venge?
Yeah, that would
Put
have been much
Zeus
better.
up against, put the Zeus up against the clock and leave the DK in the mid lane. This way, you can have like
Yeah.
a pseudo aggressive trio with a bounty hunter roaming between the jungle and the lane. So you always have this constant threat. You take control over the enemy, or not control, but at least you make sure. Like a Gyrocopter should be able to farm in that lane, and he definitely shouldn't be able to die. And it's a much better chance of survival than having a Zeus up against a dual lane. And I don't know. It's just that DK pick was already bad, but just the way they laned it was even worse. Like Zeus, there was no way he would not constantly die to this lane unless he actually left the lane, which he actually didn't, even after the Lina got her Yules.
Yeah, and also just the fact that you have that bounty hunter. Essentially, they weren't C9 wasn't able to interact with EG in any real way, and then EG just had like Shadow Demon Lina, and that's just going to get you kills. That's going to get you kills if the opposing lane can't interact with you. So, yeah, that was.
I
Like-
mean, Theo also played 17 and 1 and 9. You can't say he had a bad game. He had like
Yeah.
one of the fastest Yules that we've ever seen on any hero ever. Just absolutely made it impossible for Bone 7 to have a good time.
Yeah.
And I think that the warding of PPD was like top notch in that game. The sentry wards, especially, they caught out No-Tail in so many different ways. It was probably like the second best game sense that I've seen at the summit after the secret game where they just kept on dusting like arbitrary, like they bumped into someone, they dusted, and they made a kill like 3 times in a row. Like it was such good game sense by PPD. His warding was top notch, and he made some very, very good disruptions. We're seeing once again the power of Shadow Demon and Chen. That's actually something that LGD Ints made very, very popular when they were around. Like, you pick the hardest carry that you can, or a big YOLO carry, and you're able to always send them home. Like, guaranteed. You just send them home, banish them, they're safe. Very, very reliable combo.
I definitely think that PPD was a winning factor in that game. Like, he just crushed Bone 7 almost single-handedly. I mean, here had all the gold, all the kills, all the, I don't know, whatever records, but it was PPD that just enabled it. And
PPD has been really solid. Even if EG looks so in some of these games, PPD has generally looked pretty good in terms of zone play. And I mean, you could say that sort of you can put some of their losses on him because he's the one calling their shots in game. But at the same time, it feels like sometimes it's people not quite doing what he says. I don't know.
Oh, I mean, at the same
It's
time,
hard to
there's also been a few shitty drafts, like especially this tournament. So I
Yeah,
guess he could
especially
fall
the earlier drafts. Were
Yeah.
a bit, yeah.
I also think
They
that
are
the draft
improving.
skins-
They are improving.
Yeah, they're definitely steadily improving. I thought that Rave, like the draft against Rave, were already a step forward from what they had
Yeah.
against C9.
That wasn't hard though.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. But what they had against C9 now was actually incredible. Like I think they outdrafted them in 2.5 games, probably.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They outdrafted them and then they outplayed themselves in game 2.
But EG's also having like the longest games that we've seen, so that
that's
suggest
just
that they're having like very reactive drafts. Able to take on the enemy at multiple times.
Yeah, but I mean that's just EG in general. They aren't a super aggressive team. Like even if the meta is aggressive, they prefer. Like if you think back to sort of like pre-TI3, what they like is multiple points of initiation. They used to draft like double initiation lineups, and that just means that they can they just sit back and they wait for those fights where they can initiate on you from 2 different directions and split up the fights and pick you apart, and that's just what they like to do.
They also like hedging their bets. They like games. They like drafting lineups that can win at any stage in the mid game or the they always pick like 2. Like they always either can win very early, like dominate you to the point that you GG, or they've also got like late game insurance. They've always got like some other way to win. They're very hedged in that regard. They never they're one of the least likely let's pick a 5-man pushing lineup in this batch at least.
Yeah. And then it comes to the last game, and there's 2 storylines to this one.
First of all, you were wrong.
I know. I was so wrong. I was so wrong.
You were so wrong.
Booyah! Yeah, and the first storyline for me is absolutely IG. I don't know what the hell was happening with them. They crumbled so hard. They played so bad. I don't. Not even like just the play. The drafts were complete.
The drafts were bonkers.
Dog shit.
Yeah, I think the drafts were pretty awful.
Yeah. We'll get into that in a bit.
I think draft for game 2 was actually okay. But...
I tweeted after the series that I think Secret broke them, and I think absolutely they lost confidence. They aren't doing their own things. They aren't drafting their own things, and that's just
quickly to note that to this whole Secret broke them. I believe there was a tweet from FY on his QQ who actually also said that there's apparently trust issues within a few teams, and I think this perfectly applies to IG. I wouldn't. I mean, I said this. I don't know. I think I said this in a Toffee show after the DAC shuffle, and what I said was just that I'm actually surprised that this IG, or rather, I would be completely surprised if this IG team would last a minute after TI5, because just the way the egos collide in this lineup. They have Ferrari. Ferrari's not the strongest ego player, but you have Burning.
Ferrari's not that
Chuan.
ego, and Ferrari actually, he's wanted to play with Burning for like a long time. That's been something that's been in the works for a long time. But Chuan, Chuan has a hefty ego. Luo, he was the glue that kept the old IG together. But I think in terms of I think he's a really, like, he can be an okay player, but he's never going to be a star player, and he can be really limiting in terms of his hero pool, in terms of what he can actually do for the team. And I think
I don't know. I think
have been getting flamed recently because he's been a bit lackluster. And Faith has, like, Faith. If you think back to TI2, how good Faith actually was, he was really good for his position. He was one of the better players of that position, and then now he's not even close. Like, he's very mediocre.
The thing is, I don't think it's fair to say that Lua is like got a limited hero pool. I think in this patch specifically, there are lots of heroes that can offlane that Lua can play like perfectly well. I think Lua Centaur, which was their game 1 draft, is like a good thing. I think Ferrari Queen of Pain is a good thing. Burning Brewmaster is a good thing. Faith Disrupt is obviously a good thing. The Chuan Dazzle, not so much. But, like, they have lots of things that they can do. I think that they're just missing direction. They're missing, like, Faith I don't think is very good at drafting on this patch yet. And that needs to improve if they want to win as a team. I think that they can very, very easily be a top 3 TI team if and only if their drafting gets to the level of the other teams. Their individual play is like perfect.
You say a lot of. I don't think their individual play is perfect. Not even close. But I think their individual play is sometimes on point, sometimes not. But you said you sort of like a lot of these heroes for the people who are playing them in the game 1. For me, just looking at this draft, it felt like IG trying to be secret, not IG trying to be IG.
That's fine. I agree. I like totally agree that this draft is horrible. This is like
if you give those heroes to Secret can win that game, but IG can't win that game with those heroes.
Yeah, but what I mean is like the whole concept of the draft isn't just a combination of what heroes are good and of my plays that I can allocate these heroes to what is the most optimal lineup that I can draft. It's more a question of, like, does the style that I'm trying to, the strategy and the way in which I want to win, does it suit my team? And I don't think that this draft at all is an IG way of winning again. This is like you say, this is a secret way of winning. This is like where the supports make lots of things happen. The supports do something, and in the mid game they are unstoppable. Like, the supports are rich. The supports have made lots of kills. The other cores are very weak. This draft by LGD is a very, very cohesive draft. Having the Pugna, having the Bristleback. I mean, Zhao 8 is like regarded as one of the best direct to AT. He can see what's happening. He knows what's happening. For him to have had such a good game on Lina is just an indication of how good their draft is. Zhao 8 is normally like one of the mid-level KDA players on his team. He normally has quite a lot of deaths. He normally doesn't have a lot of kills. He is there as a director. But in this game against IG, who have such individually good players, he has outplayed them. And that just means that there must be something bigger that's wrong here. And I think that the draft is, like you say, that problem.
Yeah,
maybe they're drafting, they have too much respect for Secret. Maybe that's the thing. Maybe they're trying to emulate Secret. But the fundamental flaw here is that Faith is drafting not very well. And I think that if he picks it up, they can be amazing.
I mean, I think we all agree on that Faith or just IG as a whole is not drafting well right now. But at the same time, I have a problem with this whole that their individual play is so strong, because what I saw in
No,
yesterday
yeah,
and what
it
I
was-
actually also see online a lot is just that their individual play is not as good as you'd expected from them.
I
Uh,
mean, they have like, for me at least, Ferrari's one of the best mids. So like he's been so consistently a top level mid, but even he wasn't actually looking that great in every game here.
Yeah, that's true.
So-
Maybe in this specific series, a specific tournament, he hasn't been playing that well.
And Burning is playing too passive.
Burning's playing. Yeah, that's true too.
Like,
But I mean,
he knows how to do early game aggression. He knows how to like balance that on his comfort heroes. But when it comes to like putting him on heroes like Brewmaster and Clinks, it doesn't seem to come together.
well, Brewmaster is actually one of his signature heroes, so I'm not.
Oh,
I actually like. The thing is, we don't always know. Well, like when you watch the game, you can't always say that just because Ferrari's not doing the right things, that it's actually Ferrari's fault. Because maybe it is a team direction to say, "Hey, don't do this. Like, don't go for this kill that could potentially, I don't know, either be super great or just be super bad because you're feeding in return." You don't know who's saying, "Hey, Burning," or whether or not Burning is in charge of his own doings. That's.
I can't imagine Burning being on a team and not calling shots to some extent.
Well, if he is,
He's
then
called shots on every team that he's been on.
yeah,
more or
but
less.
that's a problem then for this team, because I believe they have multiple people that want to call the shots.
they need a director. That's what they need. They need to
Yeah.
clone Director 8. That's what they need.
No,
I think IG is a team that if coaches were allowed to interact directly with teams during a game, they're the team that would benefit the most from it.
maybe
If there was a good coach.
maybe.
Honestly, actually, I think it would be LGD because they have Mikasa.
Okay, yeah. Well, it depends on who IG get, but I think IG could benefit the most from a coach. Like live in the
Does
game.
IG actually have a coach?
They have a coach. I believe they have a coach.
Didn't they used to have like? God,
Oh no, I
was 820 coaching them at some point?
I don't know, but I completely mixed them up with Vici. I know that Vici has a coach.
Vici has QQQ. I forget. I'm pretty sure IG has at least had a coach.
I mean, if they had a coach right now, he'd probably not be doing a good job, or his work would be not really effective.
On the other hand, like, it's not an easy team to coach.
Yeah, it's not.
I can't imagine it's easy to go tell Burning or Chuan what to do.
It certainly isn't, but like, you can't just say, "Hey, like, let's hire a coach," and when he doesn't reach the team, like that's the purpose of a coach. He needs to reach the team,
Yeah.
and if he doesn't, it's just the coach is ineffective. Like, yeah, maybe it's a difficult job, sure, but that is the job. He needs to reach the team and needs to make sure that the team listens to him.
Yeah.
So whoever leads the team needs respect. Like even at TI4, newbie on day one were like physically fighting with each other, right? Like that's what I heard. They were actually punching each other.
I walked past them. They were basically shouting at each other because they just lost the game against, I don't know, I think it was some really embarrassing team. I don't know, but they were literally just really screaming at each other. And I mean, it's
they
Chinese,
lost
so
to
it's
Nar
very
or
loud.
Tinker early on, I think.
Anyway, but
Something like that.
You need to have someone who like the team respects, and it's a very hard role to fulfill when you have a team of superstars.
But at the same time, this is just a general issue that every team faces, right? Like every team has this issue of finding this one leader that they all respect enough to listen to him. Like, I define a good team by having that good leader that everyone respects.
Yeah. Anyway, game number two, or do you want to carry on?
Yeah,
to
game
one?
number 2.
Okay.
This one actually, like the first game, it felt like they were trying to channel Secret in terms of their draft, and they fell behind a bit in the early game, and then LGD just came online a lot earlier, and the whole thing didn't work.
If anything, sorry to interrupt you, but if anything,
Yeah.
I'd say they tried to draft EG like. The Shadow Team Chen SF, and then also with the Clinks.
Yeah.
No, yeah, game two, yeah,
Game two.
yeah. That's that.
Okay.
Game
Okay.
two is like it's a mix of comfort picks. It's like Fate's Shadow Demon is one of his comfort picks, and Luo Earthshaker is a comfort pick, and Chuan would have probably gone on Enchantress if it wasn't for the fact that they have the Shadow Fiend, and that's like supposed to be a nearly unbeatable combo. But the problem is when you look at that lineup, it doesn't look like they have an idea what they're doing. Like it doesn't look like it's a game plan. It looks like, well, we're getting some comfort picks and we're getting some supposedly OP combo, and then we're taking Clinks because EG's playing it well, and you just end up looking at that and like the SD can be a really good aggressive support, but only if you have something that works with him in terms of his where he can set up that aggression. But when it ends up in a lineup like this, it's actually really passive. And then you have Chen, and you're actually playing that really passive. And then you have Earthshaker, and he's actually not putting out any kind of presence. And then you have Clinks, and Clinks isn't getting any kind of support really, and he's going up against the Darkseer, and he's forced to be a bit passive on that lane. And LGD essentially just does whatever they want, and they roam mid and they kill Ferrari. And then at the point where IG wanted to try and respond, in terms of like you look at those at the ganks, LGD could just move MMY and Zhao 8. They just moved them to a lane and they could take a gank. They could get a kill. LGD, when they tried to respond, they started 4-man gank training instantly because they needed 4 people just to even try and get a kill. And even then, like they got that kill on Sylar, and then they tried to move top, but they couldn't even get a kill on Maybe. So it just felt like they were having to commit so much more in terms of getting less out of it, and it was just, yeah, it didn't feel good.
But I think we've talked a lot about how IG has played super bad in these 2 games, or rather really, or not up to their level. But I think we should also say that LGD has definitely stepped it up in comparison to what they did before.
Yeah.
Sure, IG made it a lot easier for them, but at the same time, I think this time around, at least, I think especially for game 1, it was more like their draft felt really good, and just the way they moved around the map was actually pretty smart. Like they just, I thought that they finally had a game plan that they were all willing to do. Like they were all willing to pull off the same plan, and I think this is something that LGD has been lacking in the first day or on the second day, I guess. And I hope that they can carry this on to the next game, because up against Vici Gaming, if you're not bringing a game, you might as well just call GG as soon as the draft is over.
Yeah, the thing that we were talking about previously was that since the team came together, Maybe has been a weak link on the team.
Well, he's either the weakest link or he's the strongest link. It's like,
yeah, but I mean, he's not been playing sort of to the level that a lot of people hope from, like consistently at least. And in terms of, you look at his games against Secret, he went 2-6-3 on Brewmaster and 0-8-2 on Shadow Fiend, and that's kind of terrible.
People often say that Lua is the like kind of indicator of whether IG is doing well or bad. Maybe, he's that as well.
Yeah. And against IG, maybe was 205 in the first game, which is a very short game, kind of low kill. So, but yeah, that's quite dominant. And 15-1-17 on Ember Spirit in the game too.
Yeah, what a commanding performance. It's also to be said is that Ember struggles very, very much if he doesn't have, like, if the game's not over by like 45 minutes, 40 minutes, Ember's win rate goes down. But I think that's mainly because, like, Ember's a good way of like hanging in there. He's good at being able to hold off. But it's also a lot of games, if you're behind as Ember, it's very hard to come back in. And in close games, Ember Spirit isn't that good. He is incredible where he's like got a huge amount of farm and he can one click kill two supports.
Ember
And
has Ember has
maybe
two strong points. It's like
laning stage.
not really. Well, his lane stage is pretty good, but then
Yeah.
I think it's when he hits around level 11. Nemfi or Matu was explaining this to me, like essentially you hit around that point, you can just literally go around doing whatever you want. You've got all the abilities up, and you can just go ham. And if you're really playing it aggressive and taking advantage of that, and you're able to do that, then you can be really, really like impose your presence on the opposing team, and then you fall off for a bit until you start getting those items up, and then you're really powerful.
I really like the Darkseer synergy with Ember Spirit. Yeah. Able to Iron Shell, able to surge him ahead. You know, it meant that he could use some of his spells to dodge stuns, to dodge this and that, and just, as you say, go ham, make lots of kills, 15 kills, 58 minutes. I mean, that's very impressive.
Yeah.
I liked his item build as well. I think the Blink Dagger actually was very, very good, and at the right time. He went something like Phase Yasha, and then at some stage he sold the Yasha and when he bought his 6th item. So Blink Dagger I think was his 4th item then, 5th item. It worked out really well. Getting up close and personal on the Earthshaker, killing him off, killing the Shadow Demon.
He had some really clutch play. Like at the bottom lane when they were pushing the tier 2 tower and IG was defending, Lua had a really sick echo on the Razor and the Rubik, and he was about to drop the Fish as well, which would have definitely sealed the kill on the Razor. But then there was a huge Sleight of Fist that caught, or the chains actually. Well, Sleight of Fist chains that caught the Earthshaker. If that hadn't happened, I think IG would have gotten the fight, and I mean they were on the verge of turning it around anyway. But yeah, I think maybe had a really really good and sick game. And as you guys said, like if maybe it's not doing well, it usually just means that LG is going to lose because, I mean, they're giving him the mid role, right? And they're really dependent on him to actually do something as well. And
he actually played the Ember Spirit from safe lane, but yeah.
Yeah, but just in general,
he's getting a lot of resources.
Exactly, like they're putting so much attention to him, or they just want to make sure that he has a good time. And if he doesn't, it just usually means that LGD is losing. So, but yeah, yesterday he definitely showed why he was considered to be one of the next superstars for China. But as you said, Sunzu, like he needs to prove this on a consistent level. Yeah. He has definitely not done so in the past. I want to say the past 6 months. Wow. And I guess he can show his worth.
I actually got a bit interested after those games. You know, after seeing just how good his stats were. I actually checked the KDA, average KDA for this tournament right now. Maybe is the highest at 13.4.
Yeah, well, that's mainly because he had 32 in that Ember game.
No, well, he also had one of those games against NotToday. So but it's a bit skewed, but at the same time, you did that against IG. That's not a bad opponent. Like even whatever's wrong with IG, that's not a bad opponent. So,
that's true. Over a longer sample, maybe he's actually in 5th place in terms of KDA, 4.3. Ferrari is at 5.1. How and Fear 4.5, and Super's at 4.4. So I mean that's still to only be beaten by those 4 players, you're doing something right.
And then before we call it quits and let they've already started their pre-show, but
it's a lame pre-show.
They just plug sponsors and
like that shit.
Yeah,
just kidding.
Screw them. The playoffs are starting, so we get a China versus China and EU versus NA matchup. So Vici game versus LGD. Who do you guys like?
2-0 Vici.
I think 2-0 Vici is the safest thing to go, but
I mean,
I think that we could see a game for LGD, even if LGD won 2-0. I think that's like
it is hard not to respect. LGD a bit more after what they did to IG. But at the same time, IG just Vici is not going to make the same mistakes. They're not going to have the same problems drafting as IG did. So
Scans actually said to me, he's like, I would think Vici would win, but I wouldn't be too surprised about LGD. And I said, surely Vici's like been dominating LGD in China in like the last few months. And I just looked at the stats earlier before this started. It's pretty close. 9 games won by Vici, 7 games won by LGD since DAC.
I think though that when you look at these stats, I think what,
I mean, it's
or
the
in my
online,
opinion, yeah, it's just online. Like it's the same phenomenon with IG, except that it's not as bad because I don't think Vici takes games that are online too seriously. I think you can just tell it from the draft and like.
Yeah,
it's just,
I think
it's just
the drafted by
VGS.
the drafts by Vici have been top notch, but the LGD drafts were good in that last series. They weren't bad at all.
Yeah.
But yeah, Vici 2-0 is probably where I'd put my money, and if not, Vici 2-1.
Probably.
I think it all
I
comes
don't know.
down to the first game.
Like LGD prove me wrong, but for now, Vici 2-0. Yeah. So, what about Team Secret versus Evil Geniuses? Did PPD pull something out?
I think that Secret's drafts have looked a lot better. We've not seen these teams play since DAC. Secret's had some shocking results since DAC, but they've also had some very good results. They've beaten IG 3-2. They've looked really solid here. I think it's going to be a Secret win, but I think that this could go to a third game. PPD might have something up their sleeve. Maybe another jungle Cuddle or jungle Crystal Maiden. I don't know.
Honestly, this is something that you can't pull off twice on a land. Like it's
I'm
like
saying something like that.
It's like level
You can maybe pull it off, but I'd be really concerned about Secret has thought about you doing that. So if you get to do it, there's a really good chance that they have something planned. Secret S4's drafts have been really impressive, just in terms of how he mind games his opponents, how he sees 2 steps ahead. It feels like in every draft, I think PPD can match with S4. And we might get a third game here just based on that. But the bigger problem is that for me, Secret is playing better. On a person to person basis, Secret is playing better right now, and that is why I feel like they're gonna win this matchup.
I think Secret's gonna win the game 1, and I think EG is gonna take game 2 and 3. I'm just gonna put it out there because I think PPD. I trust in PPD. And I trust in the fact that I trust in the fact that EG is just a beast on LAN. And
is this you just wanting to say
if
Cloud9 was better than you thought?
If Cloud9 gets eliminated, it should be by the guy that wins the tournament, right?
Exactly.
Because then C9 can be like, we would have been second if it weren't for those guys.
Exactly. Yeah. Let's forget the fact that you got absolutely destroyed by Vici Gaming.
I don't recall that.
Yeah, but it wasn't an elimination game, so it doesn't count.
Yeah.
I think there's like a 30% chance. No, maybe a 40% chance that EG take 1 game at least. I don't think it's likely that they'll win.
I'm pretty all in on Team Secret winning it 2-1. So
anyway,
yeah. Let's drop that into the loose bracket. Who wins, LGD or EG? Or LGD and Secret?
I think EG, the way in which LGD was drafting yesterday, PPD seemed to understand, as they were drafting. Yeah. And as the game was going on, he was making very, very accurate predictions about how things were going to happen. And that's generally an indicator that if you know how they're playing, if you know what they want to do, their style, their strategy, then you believe, the only reason you'd say that is if you believe that you can beat them. So it's either overconfidence or it is just good understanding. I think it's good understanding.
Also, not to take anything away from LGD, but I think they have, unlike any other top team, I think they have a very clear weakness, which I think we already elaborated on is the fact that maybe needs a good game.
Yeah.
And I think like no other team poses like has this sort of big weakness, like this big sign that says, "Hey, punch here and you win," basically. Um, and I
Well,
think this,
IG, if you dominate Lua, then you win the game.
I think no,
I'd
I don't.
say
I think Luo has been a punching bag quite a lot, and his team still managed to win. Just because I feel like, if anything, I'd say it actually it's actually dependent on Chuan and Faith in the early game. If they have a good early game or not. Like if they make something happen in the game. If they don't, then you usually lose. I don't know. That's my opinion anyway.
yeah. So what about the winners bracket final? We've all got Vici gaming there. Two of us think it's going to be Team Secret. One thinks EG.
I think if it's EG has a better like I personally think EG has a better shot of taking a game off of Vici, in the best of three scenario. So if it was EG, I'd say it's 2-1. But either way, I think Vici is gonna win.
Nah, EG's gonna lose because then Liquid Dota was wrong, but still like kinda right. It's got to be EG that gets knocked out first of these teams. So
No,
I think
no.
okay, well let's talk about both situations. You think that if Vici, EG, it's going to be like a 2-1 Vici, but you think if it's a Vici Secret, it's going to be a 2-0 Vici. I can kind of get behind that. I think that it's likely if EG meet Vici that EG will get a game, but I think Secret also has a good chance of getting a game.
See, I actually, for some reason, I feel like Secret is going to beat VG if they end up in the winners bracket final.
I think
I think it's going to be a 2-1. I don't think it's going to be a 2-0. But in terms of, I think Secret is better in terms of like countering Vici's early aggression style.
Yeah, that might be true.
Maybe.
Oh,
I think
it's not.
S4 has
Like,
enough respect.
They have
for...
the two teams have very different styles of how they would go about that. Like EG would look to just sort of outplay them early, maybe more. I don't know. Like, but while Secret would maybe pick a more early game lineup, and what worked for Empire was that Empire is actually more aggressive than Vici. So.
Oh, if only Empire was at this land. I think this.
Yeah.
Empire would easily win.
I think if Secret get aggressive supports, they don't fall into the trap of getting passive supports, and like they're gonna pick mid game team fight type core heroes. So if they just like, I think they can run the team fights against Vici. I think they're probably a better team fighting team.
It's also quite hard to say because this is like the first time we're seeing S4 draft against Vici.
Yeah.
And I think S4 is... I don't want to say a better drafter because that means too many things at once. I think that Puppy's drafting against weaker teams is like a way to absolutely dominate them. Like, I don't think Puppy will drop like more than like 10% of games to weaker teams based on a draft. I think games in which they lose because of bad play when Puppy was drafting against weaker teams. Against equal or stronger teams, I think that S4's got more respect for what makes other teams stronger, and as a result,
S4
they seem to draft better.
Just when you talk to S4, he's one of the smartest people in Dota.
I think Puppy is like,
that
just
also
equally smart.
That does
Like,
that does also sort of apply to Kuro and Puppy and stuff like that. And also, like, honestly, the most interesting conversation I've ever had at LAN was probably listening to Black talk about another team's like two teams drafting. Just watching the draft, talking to him about he's really interesting. He has a really interesting viewpoint. But yeah, I don't know. I trust in S4 when it comes to like outthinking his opponents. When it comes to coming up with good solid strategies, having a really good executable plan. He's one of the better ones.
I think that given a problem, Papi is the kind of guy who says, "Look, if we stick with the plan that we've got let's say a 70% chance of winning as it stands. If we had to change, like, and let's say we've practiced 80%, like we're 80% practiced on the strategy, he would pick that over something which has got like a 70% chance of working, like a 80% chance of working, but they've only practiced at 60%. He'd rather stick to the tried and tested because he feels comfortable with that. He feels that they can make small nuance changes. They can do little things differently here and there and everywhere, and it's going to add up to a point where it offsets any disadvantage that they have. And I mean, people call Puppy stubborn. He's stubborn at the right times. Like there was that series against EG where he like refused to ban Lycanthrope, and Arteezy played Lycanthrope every time they could. Like that was sure, Puppy was stubborn. He didn't want to change what he was picking, but he was doing it not for illogical reasons.
Yeah, I get what he was trying to do there. I just disagree with what he was doing. Like, I don't mind that you go into a matchup like that and you say this is a certain thing that they like to do and this is what we're gonna target. But I think he targeted the wrong thing in that particular matchup, because I think Arteezy's Lycan was certainly a much bigger threat to them. But anyway, I think we're about done for today. The games are about to start up in just
no one's in the lobby. It's all good. Everything here is
nobody's in the lobby. Oh.
I think that Andre said that they're starting at 1:30, so I expect the teams to join probably in the next few minutes or something.
Classic beyond the schedule.
No, well, I mean that's the time it was scheduled to start.
No,
and what's also quite nice is that the games that are being broadcast have no delay. It's like 10-second delay, which is very rare for a tournament. But I mean, they have admins sitting right there making sure people aren't receiving Skype messages or Steam messages or whatever. But it's really nice that the stream is only 10 seconds, 20 seconds behind what's happening.
Yeah. So, get to see the Vici LGD in just a bit. But,
and then later on we get to see Vici Secrets, and then... So, last prediction, before we head off, who do you think is going to win the Summit 3? Now that we're at this stage, 4 teams remaining, we say goodbye to 1 today and 2 tomorrow. Make a prediction, lads.
EG comes back from the lower bracket and takes it all.
Oh my god, I hate you so much.
I mean, this is usually something that EG actually does, right? They have these storylines, so
it's gonna make absolutely no sense in the end, but it's gonna be EG.
No, I think Vici's gonna crush everyone.
I like. In reality, Vici and Secret probably would be my favorites, and I rate Secret maybe an inch higher, but we'll see. Like the fact that Secret actually won a LAN now, so that's a huge monkey. That's a huge monkey off their backs. Like we don't need to be. This isn't as much pressure on us anymore.
Sorry to interrupt, but are we really going to compare the Red Bull LAN to any other LAN event?
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. But, that was a pretty shitty LAN event, but it was a BO5 final, and it's a mental block. At some point, it becomes a mental block. Like, you're on cloud 9, and you get to a final, and you're like, well, okay, this is where we lose.
Wait, how was that tournament any different to like another tournament? We saw good teams slamming shit teams, and we saw some shit teams slamming some shit teams, and then we saw a really good final. Like, that's like 80% of Dota 2 tournaments.
It's the format where Secret and IG didn't even have to play one another before. Like they didn't have to face any good team before they
Yeah,
actually.
okay, but that was because the other teams were retarded. They should have ganged up and
Yeah, but like
targeted them.
I mean, it's just the fact that the format allows that. You know, it's just already.
Yeah,
kind of-
but if you know if EG wins in the first round here, and Secret come through the lower bracket, then Vici and Secret will never have had to face until the finals.
True.
No, but yeah, but I don't know. For me, what I like about that is sort of looking at how Secret played against IG at Red Bull, and then looking, at this event how they played against them. So they clearly learn a lot from facing a team once, and then going up against them the next time. So even no matter what happens in the winners bracket final, if they face there,
Yeah.
I think Secret is going to take a lot out of that and apply it to the eventual finals if they get to there. So I
Okay,
like
dokes.
that bit.
So MMY has joined the lobby, and that is a signal that we should wrap it up.
Yes. It's been
I
fun.
guess
Thanks for
it's
listening.
Yeah, I think it's been a good day, and one more day left. One more pre-show,
One more day,
pre-show.
yeah.
Pre-show.
Yeah, we'll be back tomorrow. Same bat channel, same bat time, or well, it depends on Skim if it's the same bat channel.
Not
But
sure.
yeah, be sure to follow us on Twitter at SunsuDota, at Skim Gaming, at NoxvilleZA. You see the tags in the stream, and be sure to tweet us your feelings and why we're idiots and why we're not idiots, and all of that type of good stuff. But until next time, guys, cheers.
Cheers.